Welcome to the Refinement Challenge. My name is Beth, I am your host, and on this podcast we unlock life lessons, relationship advice, and mindsets that refine ourselves to be the best that we can be. Let's dive in. Welcome back to episode 5, a whole hand worth. How exciting. I will say one thing, my audio might sound a little bit weird. If it doesn't, then apparently editing Beth is a genius. But I'm still getting used to my microphone and how I do my little setup. I don't even have a desk at the moment. I'm sitting on the floor. My partner was so generous enough to find me a little soundproofing booth, which is now in use. But I myself am still quite amateur with this, so please bear with me. But hey, at least you'll hear the growth over the episodes. So, without further ado, let's dive into episode 5. I want to talk about balancing work life with our personal growth, because I know that virtually it's a very difficult thing for a lot of people, and it's really difficult sometimes to find a little bit of time just for ourselves. And one thing that's very popular with a lot of people when it comes to devoting our life to work is when you start ignoring your personal needs and your personal goals, and you start falling out of love with, your study, career, fitness plans, hobbies, and lifestyle due to that distracted mind that you have for just the workspace. You start falling out of your schedule a little bit with yourself, and there's no planning. You might find yourself running late some days, and poor organization is a very big factor as well. And when it gets to that point, you're left to play catch up with yourself. You're left to try and catch up with maybe everyone else in the office, or physically with your co-workers running around completing tasks that day. And when you get to that point, it takes up so much energy. And usually what happens when you get to that point, you might be able to ride it out for a couple weeks, but then ultimately it all comes back to feeling burnt out. Burnout and fatigue and FOMO, which is, fear of missing out, is something that I feel like everyone has struggled with at a specific point in their lives. And it's really tricky sometimes to find balance in both spectrum for yourself and your success within your work life. And I have a saying that I say to myself when I find that I'm getting into that habit again: you have to work towards your dream as well as somebody else's dream. When you go into the office and you're logging on and you start making those calls, or you start filling out those emails or that paperwork, you're working towards somebody else's dream. So it's really crucial that we also work towards our own. So how do we find balance between the two when it comes to self-focus and how that can strike productivity and positivity, and these can strike success? How do we find that? Sorry, that's my fridge in the background if you can hear that. There's 7 different types of rest that we can refer to: physical, emotional, social, mental, creative, sensory, spiritual. Those are the 7 types of rest. And what I like to do within my personal life is mix and match the two. What do I mean when I say that? For example, if I'm working on the computer, for example, I might work on it on the couch or at home in bed, because it's mental work and physical rest. If I'm doing a lot of physical labor, I might listen to music or listen to a podcast, kind of like what you're doing right now. And that's physical work with mental and creative stimulation. I came across a TikTok the other day and I saved it because I knew that I wanted to bring it up in this episode. The user is CK3scape for reference, and they go into this ideology that self-improvement can be a scam. When lifestyle channels say just drink more water or start meditating or do yoga or read 34 laws of power or do cold plunges, etc., we've got to go back to the basics. If those things truly worked, why does your life consistently fluctuate up, down, up, down, up, down? Because one minute you might be on top of the world and then the next you can't even get out of bed. That's a normal thing. But if self-improvement really worked, wouldn't life be just a straight line of progress? We all know that that's a dream that just isn't reality. But if you clearly want to improve in life, but deep down a part of you knows the truth, maybe you feel guilty about resting or about focusing on you, or that you don't deserve it, that's a very self-critical way to look at it, but it's a very popular mindset. And we all know that resting whilst having that guilt isn't really resting at all, because it possibly takes up the same amount of energy as if we were at the desk working or if we were at the construction site clocked on. It's the same ideology. It's the same amount of energy that's being burned. We're not actually resting. We're just feeling bad for it. It's not giving your body that time. And this user goes on and says that if you truly had your best intention at heart, why would you self-sabotage yourself into that critical thinking? And why does your motivation crash over and over and over like a pattern? A drug-addicted woman takes a pregnancy test and it's positive. And the next day, she's already quit everything. The drinking, the smoking, the partying, but not for her, because she did it for the love of her child. Another quote might be, a party-addicted man starts a business, and he loves what he's building, he loves his clients, and he's passionate about his mission. Then suddenly the 2 a.m. benders don't feel right. He needs to wake up early and clear-headed, so he quits partying. It's not enough, so the hangovers drag him down. He quits drinking entirely. All for something he loves more than himself, which is his purpose. It all falls back to the idea that you'll never consistently change for yourself, but you change for the person that you love, or for the thing that you love. Nietzsche, the philosopher, quotes, "He who has a why can bear almost any how." So here's what we're going to do. We're going to build that business, start that hobby, set that goal. Because when you find an external why, everything will shift for you automatically. Love is the most powerful force a human can use, and it won't make it easy, but it'll make it possible. If you don't have a consistency problem, you have a purpose problem. You need to find that love and that admiration, and the rest will follow for you. Studies show that companies lose 32 days of lost productivity a year due to employee depression, which is often caused by the stress and the burnout that is experienced within the office or the workplace. And like I said, most of the population tend to find it difficult to genuinely rest and find time for themselves because most of us immediately worry that we're not being productive enough, that we might be letting co-workers down or even ourselves down because we're not being productive enough. And something that I find is really helpful on my days off is I treat them like an actual holiday away. I go out for a coffee, I go and see a movie, I go out on a date with my loved one. I go and visit local sites, attractions, I go to the park. They don't have to drain your wallet, but it's about just making your time off memorable. And the way we can make sure this actually happens is if we set goals for ourselves. I will go to an art gallery. I will go to the beach. I will go to the cafe and journal. I will go to the markets. They don't have to be financially draining. It's just a matter of setting time for yourself. And when it comes to setting goals, we can also put together a proper routine which sparks organization for when we are in the workplace, ensuring we're looking after ourselves, our time, and prioritizing it. I love listening to music on my time off. On the drive home, I love cooking for myself. That's a form of self-care. Cleaning, maybe waking up a little bit earlier rather than staying up late if we're getting FOMO after work, going for walks. Because when our mental health is at its healthiest, fatigue decreases and we have more drive to do more, which means that our productivity does actually spark up in the workplace more. And when it comes to taking care of yourself in that way, it's really important that we have a healthy balance with our workplace, which is why it's crucial to set digital boundaries as well. Boundary setting is quite universal. It can be used in so many different circumstances, especially this one. And it'll look different on everybody, but when it comes to digital boundaries within a workplace, perhaps it's not completing work outside of work hours, not checking in on work when we're not being paid to do so, or just not responding to emails outside of working hours either. And these are all things that I see people do a lot, and I don't really agree with it when it comes to maybe picking up a shift or communicating properly with your employer. I understand, but we still have to have that healthy balance. Dr. Faye Bate goes into people pleasing with the ideology of not people pleasing doesn't mean that you're not doing anything nice for anyone ever again. It's just ensuring that you're maintaining a fair value exchange. By people pleasing, we're imbalancing that exchange and we end up lowering our self-value even more. And a fair value exchange is basically just a written or verbal contract that exists between all human relationships, mostly employee to employer or between friends. And one big thing that she goes in on, which I cannot express enough, is people pleasing doesn't improve your relationships with people. It doesn't make people view you any higher. It just creates an expectation out of you and your kindness, because they know you'll say yes all the time. So though it doesn't need to be done every single time, and when you're first starting a job, it's definitely a really great look to be reliable and have that reliability attached to your name, we need to also get comfortable with saying no at times and looking after our physical and mental well-being. That's going to spark up our creativity flow more. That's going to be rewarding within the workplace because we'll have more drive to do more. And I understand that people are doing 50 to 70 hours a week, which is not my case per se, but there have been times where I've had those hours and I can completely understand just how exhausting it can be, where sometimes you might just want to come home and relax, and that's physical rest, and I encourage it. I remember when I was working really, really long hours at a restaurant or a bistro or a function per se, and I'd come home and my feet would just be on fire, and all that I would want to do is just sit down, and that was enough for me. So even though I might have only had 2 hours before it was reset really, and I just wanted to go to bed and start the day again, I would lay out a face mask and PJs, and I'd have that ready for me when I came home, folded at the end of my bed. I was lucky enough to be living with someone who had one of those portable foot baths, so I'd do myself a little pedicure of an evening, and I'd really just invest that little amount of time and effort and love into myself again, and it helped so much with the reset, because it's so refreshing when you actually do put that amount of time back into yourself after you've been running around clearing tables and making memories for couples and families that are going out to dinner that night. And it doesn't have to be anything large, but it's so rewarding. When I was working in administration and I'd come home after doing maybe a 10-hour day, after travel and peak hours included in that, I wouldn't want to do anything. I'd been staring at a screen all day and I'd just go, I need to just detach. So I would make myself a peppermint tea and I'd give myself a little princess shower and I'd just sit there and journal with no technology. Or I might watch a rom-com or some TV that's just really easy to watch and doesn't take too much brain power, And I'd wake up feeling so ready to start the day again. And I'd wake up a little bit earlier. I'd do my skincare, I'd put my makeup on, and I'd sit there and I'd do my hair all nice. I'd pick out a nice outfit. And that little amount of time that I invested back into myself really showed during the day, because I'd get to work and I'd have a coffee in my hand, I'd be on time, and I'd just be ready to go. And my productivity levels went up when I was doing that, rather than when I wasn't. When I was working in a really physically demanding job of an evening, I'd wake up and actually do something during the day. I'd go and browse a shopping center. I'd go to Starbucks and get that matcha. I'd go for a drive. I'd go for a walk. I'd go to the beach. I'd go do something. And then by the time I went to work, I was happy. I had so much energy and I was ready to go. Because I didn't have that FOMO that I would have had if I didn't do that. And I just stayed at home and bed rotted. And when it came to resting that night, I didn't have much second guessing about just going straight to bed, because I already had such a great day. I made that memory. And some days when I came home from work and all I wanted to do was go straight to bed, I told myself, tomorrow's another day, it'll still be there tomorrow. Just do what you need to do in the moment and don't feel bad about it. Don't feel like you've wasted a day, because you haven't. You've gotten up, you've gone to work, and you've made income. You've been social with people, or you've gotten out of the house and you've been productive. Do not feel guilty about resting. And, when you sit on your phone and you scroll TikTok and you feel bad about it, it's draining. Just enjoy it. And, some days I might come home from work and just de-stress under the shower head and just wash off all of the stuff that happened that day. Good, bad, ugly. I just get rid of it. And that's a sensory rest. Remember the 7 types of rest that I stated before? Sensory rest can be a nap, it can be a bath, it can be an early night. I mentioned social rest as well. That can be seeking social comfort when you're overwhelmed mentally. Going to the gym when you've had a really long day, that's a mental rest, because you're getting that stimulation physically. There's so many different ways. But like I said, it takes consistency, and the biggest motivation that you can have is love for what you're doing. So if you're in a job where you're really only just doing it for the money, or you're really only just there because it's the only thing that you can do to work towards your dream, which is maybe moving out or buying that car or whatever it may be, it's still doing it for love. It's still doing it for a purpose. I really hope this has helped. I won't drag it out for any more than it has to be, but there are so many ways to improve on that balance that I keep talking about. So many different ways. It's just a matter of finding your little niche thing that rewards you and gives you a bit more of that energy and endorphin release. And remember how I was talking about setting boundaries? That's actually what's going to be next episode. Episode 6, we're going to be talking about how we can set boundaries for a better life. And in that episode, I'll be talking about self-respect and knowing your limits and how to say no, how to avoid manipulation and being treated poorly as well. So definitely tune in for next episode. Until then, I'm going to log off, but just do your best for now and the rest will follow. Be patient and take care of yourself. Wow, I really sound like The Substance. Have you guys seen The Substance? I mentioned it to my dad a couple weeks ago about how I watched it, and I was a little bit in shock after viewing it, and he went, "Oh, I'll go watch it." I'm like, "No, don't watch it. Don't watch it, Dad." He watched it. He actually called me a couple days later, and I said, "Oh, how are you, Dad?" And he goes, "I'm a bit shocked." I was like, "Oh no, what happened?" Me thinking the worst. He said, "I watched The Substance." I said, "You didn't?" He said, "Yeah, no, it was a lot, but Demi Moore definitely deserves an Oscar." I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right, pop off." So you never know. But anyway, I'm sidetracking. That movie is in my top 10 now, though. Completely. That's one thing. If you guys have any movie recommendations, throw them my way because I'm looking to watch new movies. So let me know. My social media is at Elizabeth X Rogers on both Instagram and TikTok. Definitely give me a follow, and I will see you guys in the new episode. Toodles.